In a dusty corner of West Africa, where the sun bakes the red earth and roads often vanish into wilderness, Burkina Faso has made a bold promise to build 1,000 kilometers of rural roads, not with concrete, not with steel, but with bags of soil, a method so humble it borders on the unbelievable. For generations, the villagers of Burkina Faso have been locked in a cycle of poverty and isolation, waiting for outside contractors, for government budgets, for miracles that never came. But today, a technique born in Japan, known simply as Donou, meaning earth and bags, is giving these communities the power to pave their own destiny. From the hands of the unemployed, the overlooked, the forgotten, rises something extraordinary, roads that connect not just places, but people, purpose, and pride. Stay with us, because this is not just about roads, it's about a nation laying its own foundation. Subscribe, and let's walk this red dirt path together, one step for Burkina, one leap for Africa. It begins with a sack, a handful of laterite soil, and the rhythm of 20 steady strikes. Not from a machine, not from a bulldozer, but from a young man with bare arms and calloused hands. This is the heartbeat of Donou, a low-tech yet high-impact method of road construction that is taking root across the villages of Burkina Faso. The method is as simple as it is brilliant. First, workers select the soil, typically the reddish laterite that is abundant in the region. Then they fill sacks, making sure to control the moisture level just right, not too dry, not too wet. Each bag is tamped 20 times, evenly and firmly, until the soil inside becomes tightly compacted into a brick-like form. The bags are then stacked side by side, row after row, layer after layer, until a sturdy base emerges. A final cover of gravel or more soil completes the road's surface. What makes Donou so revolutionary isn't just the technique itself, but what it doesn't require. No cement, no trucks, no concrete mixers, no heavy rollers. Just human labor, local materials, and tools that cost next to nothing. And this, in a country where government budgets are stretched thin and access to industrial machinery is rare, changes everything. For too long, road construction in Burkina Faso, like in many parts of the continent, has been the domain of large contractors. These companies often charge exorbitant fees, rely on imported materials, and leave behind delays and unfinished work. Worse still, rural communities have had little say in what gets built, or when. Roads have been a promise made but rarely kept. Donou flips that narrative. Because the process is so accessible, villagers themselves can take control. And they have. In dozens of districts, local youth, once unemployed, restless, and sidelined, are now forming crews, trained in basic engineering principles, and sent to build the roads their elders had long waited for. For them, this is not just labor. It is a mission. Imagine a mother who used to walk 5 kilometers to the clinic through mud during the rainy season. Imagine a farmer who could only sell his produce once a week because the roads were impassable. Now, imagine them packing the earth with their own hands, building a path they can walk with dignity. And the numbers matter too. Compared to traditional methods, a Donou-built road costs a fraction of the price. Without the need for imported machinery or technical consultants, the government can stretch its budget further, reaching more communities in less time. Training is the key to scale. In response, a national program has been proposed, bringing together engineers from the National School of Public Works and other institutions to teach the Donou method in short-term sessions. These mobile teams move from region to region, training young men and women on how to select soil, test moisture, fill bags correctly, and achieve uniform compaction. Within weeks, they are transformed from bystanders into builders. And while Donou roads may not yet support the weight of cargo trucks or last for decades without upkeep, they serve their primary purpose, connecting villages to schools, markets, hospitals, and most importantly, to one another. They also lay a foundation not just of earth but of responsibility, because those who build the road feel responsible for its survival. Maintenance is no longer someone else's job, it is everyone's job. There's no contractor to blame when potholes appear. There's only a village elder saying, "Let's fix what we've built." But can this centuries-old method withstand the pressures of a 21st century revolution? There is something deeply moving about watching young people, once overlooked and idle, gather at sunrise with shovels and sacks on their shoulders. In rural corners of Burkina Faso, where whispers of opportunity have long faded into dust, the Donou technique has sparked something rare: belief. These are not trained engineers, many never finish school, yet when they lift those tampers 20 strikes to every sack, they are reclaiming more than land. They are reclaiming ownership of their future. In the village of Kubri, a team of 24 youths ages ranging from 17 to 29 completed a 4-kilometer stretch of road in just 2 weeks. No contractor, no government convoy. Just sweat, discipline, and unity. The community watched in awe as paths that had once been goat trails transformed into structured passageways, accessible, firm, and proudly theirs. Women sang as they passed the new road to market. Elders wept quietly, remembering promises of asphalt highways that never came. Children ran barefoot down the packed red lanes, their laughter echoing in places once silent with neglect. What emerged was more than infrastructure. It was a psychological shift. In towns like Donou and Tugan, local leaders noticed an immediate change in behavior. "Before, our youth waited," one chief said. "Now, they wake before dawn, ready to build. They are proud. They are focused." And indeed, for many of them, this is the first time they've been paid for honest, meaningful work. The wages are modest, but they come with dignity. A sense that the hands that build the road might one day build a life worth staying for. The media, too, took note. Local radio stations broadcast the efforts live. Journalists from Ouagadougou made the dusty trip out to document what they called the People's Revolution. Footage of girls carrying sacks, of boys mixing laterite with just the right amount of water, went viral on Burkina Faso social media platforms. The nation saw itself not in poverty or struggle, but in action and purpose. Yet even with this momentum, challenges arose. Some local officials, used to working with international contractors, questioned the durability of the roads. They raised concerns over safety, longevity, and whether this community craze would last beyond a season. Others warned of over-romanticizing a method that, while noble, had limits, especially in flood-prone zones or areas with heavy military movement. But amidst the doubt, President Ibrahim Traore made his stance clear. In a national address, he called the Donou effort the soul of Burkina Faso's renewal. He praised the youths who had laid the first roads, urging the nation to trust in its own strength. "We will not wait for Paris or Washington to send bulldozers," he said. "We have hands, we have soil, and now we have a way." His words electrified supporters, especially among the rural population who had long felt abandoned by the capital's bureaucracy. For them, this was more than policy. This was personal. It was also political. As international contractors watched government tenders shrink and foreign-backed NGOs struggled to justify their overhead costs, the Donou wave grew. Mayors in Saba, Bobo Dioulasso, and Kaya began requesting training programs. Churches offered land for soil extraction. Elders opened town halls for community meetings. It was, in every sense, a national mobilization. Still, in quiet corners, the skepticism lingered. What if the rains washed it all away? What if the youth lost interest? What if the whole movement, for all its beauty, couldn't bear the weight of a nation's hopes? Yet, amidst the rising hope, skeptics still whisper, will the roads hold, or will the dream crumble under the weight of time? In Burkina Faso's rural north, an old farmer named Soumaila now makes the weekly trip to the market in under an hour. Before the Donou road was laid, that same journey took nearly 3 over-rutted trails that became rivers during the rainy season. For Soumaila and thousands like him, the change is not symbolic. It is survival. The economic impact of the Donou method is already unfolding in subtle, powerful ways. Farmers can now transport produce faster, reducing post-harvest losses. Merchants reach more remote hamlets. Prices of basic goods begin to stabilize. And crucially, patients and pregnant women who once risked their lives on foot to reach a distant clinic are now arriving on time. This is what a road means in rural Africa, not just mobility, but life itself. From an employment standpoint, the effect is just as striking. In a nation where youth unemployment has long fueled despair, migration, and even recruitment into armed groups, Donou projects provide a constructive, immediate alternative. These road crews are not just temporary workers, they are forming cooperatives. They're receiving training in logistics, moisture control, soil mechanics fields that could evolve into long-term vocational skills. In several provinces, local councils are even drafting policies to reserve future maintenance contracts for these same teams, ensuring continuity and community ownership. Social cohesion is growing too. Where once conflict brewed between ethnic groups or rival villages, shared labor is fostering unity. One road crew in the Center-Nord region was made up of Mossi, Fulani, and Gurunsi youth groups that have historically had tense relations. But here, tamping sacks side by side under the sun, they found common ground, literally and figuratively. And with each kilometer completed, confidence in local governance rises. For decades, centralized power in Ouagadougou bred frustration, with rural populations feeling forgotten. But now, decentralized action is proving more agile, more efficient, and critically more trustworthy. Local governments are stepping up. Mayors are hosting public planning meetings, collecting input on where roads are most needed. Elders are forming oversight committees. Youth councils are managing work rotations and tool distribution. A model once driven by foreign aid is slowly giving way to homegrown leadership. Of course, no success in Burkina Faso can be separated from the shadow of insecurity. In the volatile Sahel region, extremist groups have exploited the isolation of rural areas. Poor infrastructure made it easy for violence to spread, and hard for the state to respond. Donou changes that equation. Security forces can now access previously unreachable zones, supply lines are shorter, response times are faster, villagers no longer feel entirely cut off from protection. This doesn't eliminate the threat, but it rebalances the terrain both physically and psychologically. Yet, amidst these gains, important questions remain. What happens when the dry season ends? Can Donou roads withstand months of torrential rain? Will the initial energy and excitement hold when faced with the slow, gritty work of maintenance? And what of the political class? Will they support a movement that empowers people directly or seek to re-centralize control? If this is the kind of grassroots movement Africa has been waiting for, drop a word of power in the comments. Let them know. We build, we rise. Because despite its humble materials, Donou is laying more than roads. It is laying down a blueprint for employment, inclusion, and a new kind of politics. But the dust on the road isn't the only thing rising. There's a geopolitical wave coming. From the outside, the Donou technique might seem like a local innovation, a clever village solution to a village problem. But as news of its success spreads, regional and global eyes are beginning to take notice. Within West Africa, several members of ECOWAS have already sent delegations to Burkina Faso to observe the method in action. Neighboring Niger and Mali, grappling with similar challenges of rural isolation and budgetary constraints, see Donou not just as feasible but essential. The African Union has also quietly expressed interest in incorporating the technique into broader rural infrastructure strategies, especially in post-conflict regions where reconstruction is urgent but resources are scarce. In some quarters, Donou is being hailed as a model of Afro-practicality, a homegrown response to deep-rooted infrastructural inequity. Yet, for all the regional enthusiasm, the Western world remains cautiously quiet. In Washington and Brussels, development agencies have tracked the Donou movement, but with some ambivalence. The method's low-cost, decentralized nature challenges the conventional aid model, one that often favors large-scale contracts, international consultants, and formalized frameworks. In short, Donou makes many middlemen obsolete. And for powerful stakeholders in the international development industry, that is a disruptive notion. There's also geopolitics at play. The United States, while not directly commenting on the program, is closely watching events in Burkina Faso through the lens of regional stability. With the Sahel increasingly destabilized by extremist threats, any method that strengthens rural cohesion and facilitates military mobility is of strategic interest. Military analysts note that Donou-built roads have already enabled quicker deployment of security forces in areas once unreachable. This aligns with American interests in curbing the spread of terror groups, but it also raises questions. Will such grassroots-led projects be integrated into larger U.S.-Africa security partnerships? Or will they remain seen as ad hoc, informal, and beneath the radar? European donors, too, face a dilemma. To support Donou openly might mean endorsing a system that bypasses traditional aid channels and international tender processes. Yet to ignore it is to turn a blind eye to one of the most effective grassroots infrastructure campaigns the continent has seen in years. And so, the response has been muted, not hostile, but hesitant. A kind of diplomatic limbo. But within Africa itself, the narrative is growing louder. We build because we must. We rise because we can, declared one community leader in Fada Ngorma. Across social platforms, hashtags like #DonouRising and #AfricaRising are trending, not sponsored, not orchestrated, but organic and fiercely local. The world is watching. Will they support, intervene, or simply stay on the sidelines? As the red soil settles beneath thousands of feet, Burkina Faso stands at a crossroads not just of geography, but of destiny. The Donou technique has proven it can work. But can it scale? Can it endure? The answer lies in how the nation and the continent chooses to move forward. First, the practical path. For roads with high traffic or military importance, partial mechanization remains necessary. Bulldozers and graders will still have their place. But for the thousands of kilometers that serve villages, markets, schools, and farms, Donou is not just adequate, it's ideal. A hybrid strategy is already being proposed. Use machinery on national arteries and mobilize communities for feeder roads. This allows government resources to be allocated more logically, saving costs without sacrificing quality. Second, the structural path. To truly succeed, Donou must be embedded into public policy. That means decentralizing authority to municipalities, offering microgrants for tools and materials, and legally recognizing community road crews as part of the national infrastructure workforce. It's not charity. It's statecraft. Equally important is training and institutional support. Technical schools and public works departments must build curriculums around Donou. Mobile units must continue to travel, train, and empower. Not just in Burkina Faso, but across the continent. Because the bigger picture is clear. Donou is not just a tool, it is a symbol of what happens when Africa stops waiting and starts building. In many ways, this is a call to the elders, those who remember a time before dependency, who recall the spirit of Pan-Africanism, of Sankara, of Nkrumah, of dignity without debt. They must now pass that fire to the next generation, not through speeches, but through structure. And to the youth, this is your blueprint. Your future is not in the hands of foreign companies, nor held hostage by distant donors. It's in the tampers you hold, the roads you walk, the unity you forge. Ibrahim Traore, by championing Donou, has done more than outline a policy. He has thrown down a gauntlet, daring a nation to believe in itself again, to stop waiting for the world, to start rising from the soil beneath their feet. This is where Africa Rising begins, not in conference rooms or campaign slogans, but in villages where dust becomes destiny. In the end, what builds a nation? Machines, money, or the hands and hearts of its people? Across the dry plains and green hills of Burkina Faso, new roads are being laid, not of asphalt or concrete, but of hope, sweat, and red soil. In a country long defined by its limitations, the Donou method has offered a different kind of power, the ability to build without permission. It is a revolution not televised, not subsidized, but born from the hands of ordinary people. And in every bag of compacted laterite lies something extraordinary, a blueprint for self-determination. This is not to say Donou is perfect. The roads will need upkeep. The challenges are many. But as villagers travel more easily, as students reach school on time, as farmers find markets waiting, something deeper begins to shift. The narrative of dependence gives way to one of design, of direction. Ibrahim Traore has positioned this movement not merely as infrastructure policy, but as a national philosophy. He understands what too many leaders forget, that dignity begins where self-reliance takes root. And by trusting in the strength of his people, he has sown something far more lasting than roads: belief. And as this belief spreads, it carries with it a vision for the entire continent. Africa Rising is not a phrase to be whispered in NGO boardrooms. It is a cry from the earth, where barefoot children stamp down gravel and grandmothers boil tea beside new roads they never thought they'd live to see. This is the chapter history did not write. But now, Burkina Faso is writing it 1 kilometer at a time, one hand-packed bag at a time. If this story stirs something deep, don't let it fade. Like it. Share it. Let the world hear how Africa rises not in silence, but in unity. Subscribe, and let's keep walking towards the future we make, not the one we're given. Drop your comment below if you believe in the power of the people. Say it with us. Africa rise.